much larger than our bodily form or our personal histories. And to me, the purpose of all meditation, spiritual practice, is to become aware of that presence, awareness, being, often called our true self. So I was inspired to share this practice this morning. It's an ancient Sufi practice of purification using the alchemical elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And this may be strange for some of you who have never explored that area of mysticism, but it's a very simple practice, a breathing practice. So I invite you just to sit straight and with your feet firmly on the floor, legs uncrossed, palms on your knees, hands up. And the first breath it's a simple breath. It's a full breath, but not a deep breath. And we begin focusing on the earth element, breathing in through the nose, out through the nose. Visualizing the color gold. Feeling our connection with earth, the earth element within us, the earth element which supports us. Tuning to all that which we experience as solid. And now the next breath is water, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Same full but not deep breath. Visualizing the color green. You might visualize a babbling brook, pure water. And now purification with the element fire. Fire is thorough. Fire is nearly unstoppable. The color is red. It's fire that moves us, moves through us. Fire purifies. And now purification with the element air. Visualizing the color blue, sky blue, like the sky today, no clouds. There, the air is everywhere. Air penetrates our bodies not just through breathing, but is absorbed. And finally, the quintessence of the elements, ether, which is very refined. The breath is in through the nose and mouth, and out through the nose and mouth. Still a full breath, but refined. Your breath may have slowed. The color is colorless, but almost like as if you're in a cloud, looking through a cloud. Rarefied. Amen. Now I invite you just to take a deep inhalation and let out a great sigh. One more time. Thank you. God bless you.
Carry a moment right after that beautiful song. Oh, good morning, good morning. Take a few seconds. Let's settle in together, if you will. And just rest in the presence of God, the presence of good. Rest knowing that all is well, that everything is working out for your good, that life is conspiring behind your back and in your face and to your left. In the words of St. Francis of Assisi, get the name right, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ to the left of me, Christ to the right of me, Christ above me, Christ beneath me, Christ outside of me, Christ within me. That it's all working together for your good. Rest in that awareness, dear family. Rest in that awareness. If you're just tuning in online, take a quick pause and just rest in the awareness of God. Catherine Ponder says that silence itself is a prayer. Charles Fillmore says that in the silence is true power, and that all the stuff that shows up in the external world, it's noise. But because it's noise, you know that it's a dying vibration. It's a spent force, according to Charles Fillmore, meaning it's on its way out. So everything that shows up in the external world that's talking, that has an opinion, that has an idea, that doesn't vibrate at the level of God, it's noise. It's on its way out. Take a moment to rest in the presence of God, to rest in the arms of God, to know that God is doing business as you. To quote my good friend Richard Burdick, God is doing business as you today. God is doing business as your life today. God is doing business as your family today. And in this deep resting, we're tuning our minds and our hearts and our ears to hear the voice of God in everything. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the ups and the downs, to hear the voice of divine intelligence speaking to you louder than the noise of the rejection, to hear the voice of God speaking to you louder than the voice of the opinions, to hear the voice of God speaking to you through the negations and also through the positivity. Know, dear ones, that you are one with this infinite, that at your deepest self, your truest self, that you are divine intelligence manifested here on earth through time and space. It took eons for you to get here, but you're here now. Come back to the room and say this with me, and so it is. Perfect timing. Put your hands together for yourself this morning. It's good to be back home with family. Real quick, let's honor those that are tuning in online. Point your hands toward the camera. Say this with me. We bless you. We love you. We appreciate you. We behold the God in you. And so it is. Our ministry is supported by partners like you. Thank you for your contribution and thank you for your support. Our ministry is supported by partners like you. Again, remember to make your offering by going online and clicking on unitybham.org. Say it, so it is. Yes, and our prayer chaplains are standing by also. So if you do have a comment, please post it in the comment section online. And for those of you that are in-house who want to honor our prayer chaplains, they are standing by as well. Should you need prayer support, please reach out to our chaplains after service. And put your hands together, if you will, just for the community we have in this house. I can't thank you guys enough for all of your hard work, not just coming together, but all the individual projects, the tithing, the support, the donations, the offerings, participating in bingo, showing up and doing business as God, bringing your best selves in all that you do, from the sound to the camera, to moderating online, to social media, to the music. It takes a community. Say this with me. It takes a community. It takes all of us giving our best self, showing up as God, allowing the personal selves to relax, and allowing God within to come forward and bless and heal and deliver. Because here's the truth. The truth of life is that there's only one of us here. We honor your uniqueness. We honor your personality. This is what makes you unique. But truly, on its deepest level, the deepest level of life, there's only one of us here. And when you recognize that, You can move past division. You can move past disagreement. You can see through differences of opinion and recognize that differences of opinion are just differences of opinion. Doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. You just see from a different lens, but you are still God having a conversation with God. That, my friends, is the work, and that's the work that we are exploring this month. Say this month's theme with me, guidance. Guidance. Today's topic is de-trust. De-trust, and it takes that awareness. It takes the coming together on Sunday. Sacred text says, forsake not the gathering of yourselves together. Coming together, doing sacred service, participating in any function that you can in community. Partnering with people that you know and partnering with people that you don't know. This stretching out. And when you do this kind of work, you move outside of your comfort zone and you learn something new. And in that process of learning something new, if you can hold on to the realization that God is with you through the stretch. Say this affirmation with me. God is with me through the stretch. So the stuff that shows up in your world that appears sideways, that appears off key, when you go to the doctor and you get the opposite of what you expected. Anybody ever have bad news? You hold on to spirit. You hold on to God. And that becomes the thing that guides you and directs you. Say this with me. They that wait on spirit shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles and soar. The waiting, we say waiting on God, but what we're waiting on is for that stress and for that tension to die. All of the distractions that make us feel like God isn't there, that God isn't speaking, that Spirit isn't guiding us, that there isn't a divine plan or divine intelligence at the heartbeat of all of the stuff that we do, both in community and in the world. But if you can, through your sacred service and your spiritual practice, fan the flame of your soul so that the voice of God becomes louder than any other voice that you hear in the world, you, my friends, can make it. Sacred text tells us in the New Testament that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to this mountain and it will get up and move. Now, here's the interesting thing about faith. Say this with me, faith. It's the substance of things hoped for. It's deep trust, and faith in Latin is fidelity. Well, what is it that I'm trusting? I'm trusting you to do your job, and I'm trusting you to keep your word. But really, what I'm trusting in is the life of God that shows up as you. Because I know God. I know what God said. I know my relationship with Spirit. I know what I feel. Holding on to that awareness and that divine intelligence, my friends, in the midnight hours, the old folks used to say, right? When you're doing that turning over in your bed and you're in between getting up and going to the bathroom, that thing holds on. Some of y'all laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes you got to take a break and thank God that you can pee. That right there is a blessing. But holding on to that awareness, it saves you. It restores you. A hard thing that Jesus says in the New Testament is that the world sometimes experiences trouble. And everybody knows what trouble looks like. But in this message of deep, deep trust, I want to invite you to remember what God looks like, what Spirit looks like, what divine intelligence looks like and feels like in your soul. And this is why spiritual practice is so important. We turn within and close the doors. Jesus says in sacred text that if you turn within, close the doors of the outside world, and your Father, your spiritual parentage, divine intelligence that sees you in secret will reward you openly. I think personally that conversation happens in secret because the stuff that shows up in the outside world sometimes contradicts that private conversation. And sometimes God and you need to have a one-on-one. When's the last time you had a one-on-one with Spirit? When you had a one-on-one with God. Believe it or not, God is having a one-on-one with us all the time. It's the stuff that gets in the way that prevents us from seeing it. Y'all following? It's easy to hear God. We talked about this last week, in the good. But can you hear God in the bad? Can you hear God in the negation? I can tell you how to do it. The way to do it is through your spiritual practice. You cultivate a relationship with your divine nature that's so strong, that's so rooted, that's so deep. When the voice of God speaks, you hear nothing else. Anybody a parent? You take your kid to the store, you yell out, Charlie! Charlie looks up. All of a sudden, all the other voices around Charlie are quiet. He hears the voice of his parent calling him. Every parent knows the voice of their child, and every child knows the voice of their parent. You don't get those two confused. So when people started sounding like God to me, I had to go back and do some spiritual work. In my own life, I had to get clear between the people and voices of opinion and voices of opposition and the voice of God. And as soon as I got clear on that, even in my own personal life, my entire life changed. Doesn't mean that people are wrong. Doesn't mean that the world won't have an opinion. Doesn't mean that there won't be things that we all have to do, because we all have things that we have to do. But when you put God first, everything orchestrates for your good. Say this with me. All things work together for my good. And it sounds like manipulation when you look deeply at that scripture, but what you are manipulating alchemically is the circumstances of your life. You're putting the main thing. When you put God first, everything else in your life lines up in divine order. Take a moment real quick and think about the stuff in your life. I think I feel my help now. Think about the stuff of your life that's having the most pull on you. The biggest emotional weight that you're carrying. The thing that's tugging you to the left and tugging you to the right. Ask yourself, is this bigger than God? And if the answer to that is no, then put your divine life and your divine nature in the place of the thing that's tugging you and tell that thing to go sit down. Because when you make God first, everything else in your life comes subject. I'll tell you a story. In the Old Testament, the book of Exodus means to come out. And I think that book in and of itself is powerful because it chronicles the journey of life of a people moving from nomadic ways of dwelling into permanency, which kind of describes us. Life isn't a destination as much as it is a journey, if I can talk to you this morning. Life is a journey filled with twists and turns. And here's the thing about spiritual development and maturity. If we allow the circumstances of life to knock us off our square every time things change, we won't get nothing done. The sun is out today, but if it does not come out tomorrow, I know it will come out the next day. Sacred texts let us know to not allow the sun to go down on our wrath. That joy comes in the morning, even though weeping may endure for a night. So things happen, life happens, but life also goes on. There has to be some permanency to who you are. And then the circumstances of your life. Make sure you hear me if you ever hear me before, because this is for me too. When you get this permanency in your soul, when you get it right in here, everything else comes subject. Because if I allow myself to anchor in this changeable world, in the changeable nature that can show up through personality, known as people, because we all have changeableness about us. I mean, you can ask my wife, I can be one of the moodiest people in this room. You hungry? Yeah. She fixes it. You gonna eat it? No, I'll eat it later. Why'd you tell me you were hungry then? I don't know. I was hungry that second. I ain't hungry now. But when you anchor yourself in God and not in the changeable world where it's cloudy today, sun comes out tomorrow, it might rain, it forecasts for a thunderstorm, but then the sun comes back out afterwards. You anchor yourself in something permanent. What the sacred text tells us, it's the cornerstone that the builders rejected. It's now become a part of the foundation. When you anchor yourself in truth, I had one of the elders tell me one time that there is nothing else that exists in the world but truth. Book of Genesis, there were trees planted in the Garden of Eden. These are truths. And the truth is all around us. But you got to be able to see it as you navigate this journey called life. Say amen to that. Amen. Book of Exodus, just to continue on with the story. The primary character is Moses. Say this with me, Moses. Pronounced in Hebrew, Moshe. Moses means to draw out. And without going too deep into Moses' story, Moses' name means to be drawn out because he was drawn out of the river. And many of you have been drawn out of the rivers of life. You've experienced much, which is why it's hard to deeply trust, because you trusted in the wrong thing. Anybody ever trusted in the wrong thing and been disappointed? But think about this. The last time you trusted God, what happened? Oh my God, you ever had God blow your mind? Show you that you are capable of more than you could ever imagine? Or watch this, show you that as soon as you turn the lights out on people, they surprise you and change your mind. Or God restore confidence in you concerning someone else who you had disqualified. That shows you, the old folks used to say, the kind of God that we serve. And in unity theology, it shows you the kind of God that you are. That you are so infinitely intelligent that you will supersede your own natural mind and blow it up. You will supersede your own natural intelligence and blow it up. That the divine in you is so smart and so creative that it will hide things from your conscious mind because your conscious mind isn't able to conceive it yet. And it will slowly start to feed these things to it, these ideas, these thoughts, until one day you can see the big picture. I want you to think about this. The last major problem you had, where you had problems trusting, where you had problems believing that it could happen, where you had problems believing it could work out for you, and it actually did work out for you. Imagine what your experience would have been like had you just believed God in the beginning. If you held on to faith in the beginning, if you trusted your divine self in the very beginning, and watch this, you even trust the wisdom in life that people change, that things happen, that time will pass, that time heals all, and that you can forgive any and everybody. Imagine what your experience of life will be if you become that free. Rumi said to fly toward a secret sky, to walk with no feet. Rumi also said, I've lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons. I knocked on the door. The door opens. I found out I had been knocking from the inside. When the circumstances of life get you to the point to where you can no longer trust and you're numb and you can't feel, don't take it to heart. And when it lands on your heart, allow your heart to break open, not so that you can commiserate and dwell in misery and grief, but you allow your heart to break open so more of God can come out of that tinker. More light, more joy. So the pain, the disappointment, all the agitation, all of the stuff that shows up in us, as us, through personality, you don't allow that stuff to fret you, to get you down, to cause you to lose your joy. Say this affirmation with me. The joy of the Lord is my strength. And for the people that have disappointed you, God can show up as other people. So you put your trust back in humanity. Because you're disappointed in this one, it doesn't mean that that represents all of humanity. You can live again. You can love again. Life can come through you and out of you in ways that you can't even imagine. And so like Moses, all of us have been drawn out of the circumstances of life for a purpose. That's why we're here today. And so Moses in the book of Exodus, one of the key stories is that he found himself the backside of the desert, walking. And he saw something, and the reason for him going is sort of immaterial. He thought he had lost something. And many of us Two, if we ride the circumstances of life, regardless of where they're taking us, you might find that God is all in all, even in these circumstances. That even during the stuff that we feel that we're lacking, the stuff that we feel that we are losing, if you can hold on to the realization that God is with you, even through the looking, it changes your experience of the circumstances altogether. This is why Wayne Dyer would say, if you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at change. If you change your relationship to pain, if you change your relationship to disappointment, you change your relationship to setback and suffering, then pain, disappointment, suffering, and setback become your greatest teachers. They teach you how to be strong. Say this with me. Be strong, and of good courage. Sacred text. You got to think about it. What makes you strong? I can tell you, adversity. Adversity makes you who you are. You are who you are today for your losses and just as much as your wins. These losses shape your character and how you carry them and maneuver through them. They change your relationship to yourself, and they change how you show up in the world. You show me a person who's of age, who's a mature adult, and I'll tell you what they've experienced. They've experienced pain and misfortune and tragedy, but they've also experienced joy and power and gladness and bliss. You know what I call that? A full life. That's a life worth living. Of course, you don't want the pain, but now that you've experienced it, what you do with it? You let it break you open so more God can come out. So regardless of the reason why we ended up on these journeys, like Moses, sometimes we find ourselves in dry spots. But I want to give you an affirmation. I want you to write this one down. If anybody's experiencing anything dry in their life, I want you to say this with me. My dry season is over.
My dry season is over.
And you affirm that thing daily, nightly. You dissolve in your mind lack, limitation, scarcity, and not enoughness. And when you make that thing firm inside, I'm telling you, you're going to notice that there's going to be a shift in your life. So to wrap this story up, Moses is out there in the desert. He sees something that's tempting. It's a bush on fire, and it hasn't been consumed. Moses walks over to the bush, and the bush calls out to him and says, Moses, Moses, take off your shoes, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Mystically, when we take a look at the burning bush, the Jewish mystics say that the burning bush was a reflection of Moses' own consciousness. Deuteronomy says that humanity are like trees planted in the world, and our roots go deep. Our motivations, our desires, the things that we want, just like that bush, they're all rooted deeply in the ground. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say, since we're in the Unity House, that every character in the Bible itself is an aspect of human consciousness. So we are Moses, drawn out of life, and we're also that burning bush. But here's the secret to Moses' stirring up, and after this, his ministry, his going forward into life. The reason why after this experience and this encounter with the burning bush, that Moses was able to be so successful and so powerful and so eloquent, and all the work that he did with his people, was because Moses realized that the fire that he was seeing outside of him was a reflection of his own consciousness. That fire was deep in his own heart. And Moses realized that the key to my life energy is to not allow that flame to go out. Come what may, ups, downs, disappointments, that flame has to stay there. And that, my friends, is what you trust. Before you trust people, before you trust things, before you trust anything else, trust that flame, trust that divine spark. Trust God first. Put God first. Your spiritual practice first. I know you're tired. Get on up and meditate. I know you don't feel like reading. Turn on an audiobook. Feed your soul. I know you don't want to have the conversation. Go on ahead to prayer. Go ahead and get your spiritual work done. And once your spiritual work has been done and you fed your soul, you can rest because you know you've done your part. And when you do your part, this allows God to do his part. As we wrap up, let's read our quotes for the day. Read this with me. When humanity consciously knows that there is an all-enfolding divine love in whom we live, move, and have our being, they will trust it and seek to harmonize their thought with its laws. That's Charles Fillmore. But you got to know this. And it's not enough, our Unity Fifth principle, to know this, but you have to do something with this daily. Sacred text says man should always pray and not faint. So you keep a song in your heart. And this is what stimulates that trust. It creates intimacy. It creates familiarity. Meaning I know God. Well, how do I know God? How do I know divine intelligence? Well, I was just with it today. I was just doing my affirmative work. Quick pause. The times in our life when we are most anxious, outside of all the doctor stuff, because they love to diagnose us, are the times when we're furthest away from our principles. The next time you find yourself in an anxious spot, in an overwhelmed spot, run to your principles. Run to your spiritual practice. Run to someone who can remind you of who you are. So you can reorient yourself and get back familiar and come away from this far country of fear, doubt, limitation, lack and not enoughness, and return back to the consciousness of God doing business as me. That is the thing you trust in. Last quote. Repeat this with me. Spirit will keep those in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee because he trusted in thee. Spirit, God, divine intelligence, maintains your peace. H. Emily Cady calls it rest, where you can rest in God and relax in God. And God maintains that calmness. God is that peace, is that calmness in the midst of the storm, in the midst of confusion, in the midst of difficulty, in the midst of the things that we don't understand or the things in life that have not worked themselves quite out yet. That is the thing we trust in, and that is the thing that saves us and delivers us. And I want to let you know you're doing that. You know how I know? Because you're here today, right now. Take a deep breath. Let this information metabolize in your nervous system. I want you to know, dear friends, that you're going to be okay, that you are strong enough, powerful enough, and capable enough to demonstrate God in every area of your life, even the parts of your life that have not quite worked themselves out. And for those that are not here, I want you to hold the consciousness that they are able to discover their God-given selves too, and that God has the final say in everything concerning them. Thank you for listening. Peace and blessings. If you will, God doing business as us, DBA, God does business with us through our giving. So LaDonna is going to lead us in a special selection while the ushers make their way forward. For those of you that do give online, remember to make your gift by logging on to unitybham.org. And LaDonna, take it away.
Okay. Thank you for that message, Jesse. That's the one I needed to hear. I'm going to ask all of you to help me out today and thank Jane for feeding me this song so that we can feed each other with it. So please get your sheet out, and this is a restful song, and I think you will love learning it. This is the chorus. Spirit of You called your rich thief. Wake up from your slumbers and rise on your wings. Spirit, Spirit of gentleness, flow through the wilderness, calling and free. Spirit, Spirit of restlessness, stir from the blessedness, wind on the sea. You swept through the desert, you stomped with the sand, you goaded your people with the law and the lamb. And when they were blinded with their idols and lies, then you spoke through your prophets to open their eyes. Spirit, Spirit of gentleness, flow through the wilderness, calling and free. Spirit, Spirit of restlessness, stir me from blessedness, wind on the sea. You sang in a stable, you cry from a hill, then you whispered in silence when the whole world was still. And down in the city, you called once again when you blew through your people on the rush of the wind. Spirit, Spirit of gentleness, blow through the wilderness, calling and free. Spirit, Spirit of restlessness, stir from blessedness, wind on the sea. You call from tomorrow, you break ancient schemes from the bondage of sorrow. The captives dream dreams. Our women see visions. Our men clear their eyes with the bold new decisions. Your people arise. Spirit, Spirit of gentleness, flow through the wilderness, calling and free. Spirit, Spirit of restlessness, stir from me blessedness, wind on the sea.
Amen. If you will, point your hands in the direction of the offering. Say this with us together. We bless this offering, knowing it will be used for the building of this ministry. We bless the givers. It will return back to them. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And so it is. Put your hands together for yourself. Russ.
Okay, we have our closing song now, Let There Be Peace on Earth. light of God surrounds us.
I am the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
I am the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
I am the power of God.
The presence of God watches over us.
I am the presence of God.
Wherever we are, God is.
Wherever I